if this is something you want to do, like, let's get into it. I basically had to get up at 5 o'clock every morning to go fly. I realized I wanted to invest that in myself, and so I was going to make it work. In my opinion, is what gave me hope and inspiration and the ability to continue on.
How many people go through life doing work they really don't like, but every day dreaming of, say, working in the aviation industry? They say it's too late. They think it would be too hard. They think it would go against conventional norms. If you never go after what you want, you'll never have it. This is Fly the Transition. Join us as we soar through the captivating stories of individuals embracing a thrilling journey into the aviation industry. From pilots spreading their wings to mechanics fine-tuning the engines and a myriad of industry professionals, each with a unique tale to tell. Get ready to dive into the diverse backgrounds, the pivotal moments that propelled their leap, and the sheer determination that transformed their aspirations into reality. We're not just about dreams. We're about making them take flight. Welcome to Fly the Transition. And now your host, Jim Schilling.
Welcome back, all my aviation friends, to another episode of Fly the Transition, where we will explore yet another journey of aviation career transformation. In just a couple minutes, I'll be joined by JD Parsons, who is a helicopter pilot, but was a bit of a serial entrepreneur before that. He owned a truck company. He still owns a street sweep business, as well as owned a few gas stations along the way. So we'll hear his story and his bit of an unusual path into aviation. So typically I like to try to get the episodes out every other Sunday evening. Unfortunately, that didn't pan out this week. I've been pretty busy with some other ventures that has prevented me from doing the edit that I wanted to get done on this specific episode. So slight delays, but we'll have the episode for you here now. My delays come from being in the space of apparently not having enough aviation pokers in the fire. So those delays came because I'm happy to announce I have just launched a new YouTube channel. I've been pushing off this idea for a couple years now, and the bug just kind of bit me to keep exploring other areas of aviation and ways that I can create content. As I think I've mentioned in other episodes, content creation and piecing things together is really kind of therapeutic for me. So the channel itself is called Aero Explorations, and I will put a link for that down in the show notes. But essentially, I want to check out different like kind of hidden gem airports or things with unique history. So the very first episode is flying a 98-year-old airmail route, at least half of it, from St. Paul to Lone Rock, Wisconsin. I had the opportunity to go to a fly-in there, and I kind of got into the history aspect of it. So between sharing that and sharing some unique airports and destinations, I'm really excited for that channel. And there's a lot of cool visuals that I'm able to capture as we fly these routes as well. So I only have the one video out right now, but I've got a lot of other ideas and a couple things filmed already that I'm excited to slowly start putting out there. I don't have a set release schedule like I do with the podcast. It will just be whenever I have the time to sit down and edit a video to put it out there. And a spoiler alert for you, it turns out that editing video is a little bit harder than editing audio, so it does take me a bit longer to work through those videos to put those out. So I hope you'll check out that channel and that you will like and subscribe to that, and we could check out some cool things together. The other thing I want to mention is the solo episodes. I know that I talked about how I'm able to tell these different stories and perspectives of how people are able to make transitions into aviation, but we don't talk about as much like what can you do about it. So I hope that you're finding some value in those. If you've got any feedback for me, I would love to hear it. You can either send it to my socials, or you can email me at flythetransition@gmail.com, or you can leave me a review on any of the podcast players you're listening to this on, and I'd be happy to read some of those comments in a future episode. All right, that's enough updates from me. Let's get into our interview with JD Parsons. JD was really fun to talk to because it's not your average story of, I want to get into aviation, I build 1,500 hours, I try to get into airlines. JD's done a lot of really unique things in his life leading up to this journey, and he just wasn't finding the kind of fulfillment that he was looking for in his life. So he's found his way into aviation and doesn't seem to be looking back. So without further ado, my interview with JD Parsons. So, JD, thank you so much for joining me on the Fly the Transition podcast. I'm really happy to have you here, and thanks for reaching out to be part of it. Excited to hear your story tonight.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about it. It's been something that I found was a little bit unique compared to some of the other people's paths. So I'm excited to share it and hopefully inspire other people.
So it's all about, man, sharing stories and helping inspire others to go, you know what, I can do that too. So thanks for being willing to do that. So let's just get started with how were you first exposed to aviation? Did you grow up with it in your family? Did you have an interest as you were younger? How did that start for you?
Yeah, for me, I really didn't have a lot of exposure to aviation. It was something I was always interested in, but had no direct line to it. In fact, I had flown on a plane when I was 3 years old, and then the next time I flew on a plane was when I was 21 years old. So had a big gap. Grew up in a small town. I remember always being super intrigued by it. My cousins, when I'd go over to their place, they were really into planes and stuff like that. So they had all different types. And so I'd look at them and think it was such a cool feat. And, you know, of course, I'd watch movies like Top Gun and just be like, oh, yeah, the sickest thing ever, right? Adrenaline, stuff like that. So part of getting into it later was like, man, I really wish I could help other people be exposed into it, because not being exposed to it and finding it to be such a direct passion in my life, if things hadn't lined up, I wouldn't be here.
And the trend I kind of notice is if you're like born into it, so you either want to get into it or you just see it as, oh, this is just a mode of transportation for mom to take me to grandma's or whatever. So it's not something that like has this huge awe or that, or it's like I said, or you're born into it and you love it and it's your thing. And I think the people that don't have that tend to not see it necessarily as a career path or think it's too out of reach for them. So that's kind of the trends that I'm noticing, at least.
Yeah, it's a normal Sunday for them, for sure. And being involved in it now, I've gotten to see that a little bit more. Younger people being into it because of their family, like one of my buddies, like, oh yeah, I took my kids for a birthday ride, and I'm like, dude, that would have been mind blowing for me, right?
Right.
And stuff like that. So it's just so natural to them. They're like, yeah, which I find that even for myself now a little bit, right? Like now that I'm into it, people be like, oh, that's super cool. Why did you just tell me you're a pilot so nonchalantly? And I'm like, well, I guess that's a pilot thing, but
because that's what we do.
Yeah, that's what we do, right?
And just, I'm a pilot.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I had actually been flight for life in 7th grade. So I guess I was on an aircraft one other time.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, when I was in 7th grade, I got flight for life. I had a tonsil and adenoidectomy, and it went wrong, and my lungs collapsed. And so I got flight for life, and they, I was so hopped up on stuff that it was the coolest thing ever. I was looking down thinking aliens were real as I was flying past all the farmers' fields, because I didn't realize that it was just the center pivots. The experience of that was something so ingrained in me. And it was kind of funny because I was at an event. We literally flew to this event, a children's school event, in the helicopter. And I was with the owner of the company's kids. We were getting them balloons, and the lady tells the kid, I was in a helicopter once. And I was like, yeah, I've been in a helicopter once too. And my instructor looks at me and is like, you fly them. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's the coolest thing ever. Right. And so sometimes it's even crazy for me to believe, like it's just a part of normalcy now. Right.
Yeah. Almost like a pinch me type of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So what direction did you go then as you start exploring career options, I assume, in and after high school?
Yeah, so, high school is a little bit of a thing in itself. I excelled actually a lot in school, but I also didn't have as many teachers that saw that and would challenge me. So I would often get finished with my work ahead of time, and then I'd get in trouble. So I wasn't allowed to be in the programs that helped kids excel because I was getting in trouble, because I'd be done with my work and I'd want to go talk to somebody or want to bug somebody, and they'd be like, sit down, JD, So when I got into high school, I went to this program. It's called Big Picture High School. It's a program where they do learning through interests and passions, through internships. It's a very different school, even though they require you to do college things. And I actually got a degree leaving high school. It's more focused on the fact of like, you can learn things outside of just the academic structure. So for instance, I did internships like business. I went to a restaurant of a family of ours, and I learned a lot about the business behind the restaurant.
Okay.
I went to a towing company and spent years learning about towing and business and mechanicking. So I grew up with a father that was in the oil field, owned a custom car shop. So I learned a lot about mechanicking, thought that's kind of where I was trajectory. All this time, I was still interested in aviation, but had no idea that I could even get into it, right? It's a rich man's game. It's something that's just unspeakably to get to unless I joined the military. And
right.
Yeah. And being in the military, I got authority issues, so that's not going to work out very well. So that's kind of where my like trajectory was going. I was good at mechanicking. I have a really good general knowledge. I help the mechanic all the time. And he's like, you got a knack for this. I'm like, yeah, but I decided a long time ago, I didn't want to be wrenching all my life. So I ended up getting a degree, an associate's degree in physical science and welding. I had to pick something, and I didn't want to go to the automotive degree side. So that whole formulation, and with my home life, my parents had, lost everything twice, essentially, where we had to start from nothing and go back again. So I grew up in a very like not knowing, how it was going to go. It wasn't like I didn't know where I was going to sleep or what if I was going to have food. It was just kind of, just really tight. So I knew I didn't want to do that, and I wanted to work. So in high school, I was working for the tow company. I was fixing people's flat tires, doing stuff like that, making pretty decent money for myself, and realized that I could do that. And I really wanted to get into the trucks, the big tow trucks. I wanted to operate something, from operating farm equipment to operating construction equipment. So I wanted to do that. Essentially, what ended up happening is I graduated and was still working for the tow company and said, hey, I'm old enough to get my CDL. Will you help me get it? And they said, with insurance, I don't think that's a possibility. So,
oh man.
Yeah. Me not being someone that would take no for an answer, though, I decided to move on. I was like, I'm going to end up, getting my CDL at some point, but I'm going to go ahead and move on because I don't feel like the loyalty was there. I ended up working for a tractor company, was operating equipment, building equipment at the Kubota store here. On the side, I was welding trailers, building trailers, using my degree for building trailers. And then I finally got an opportunity through leaving my job building equipment. I ended up getting in an argument and ended up leaving. And the next day I had a job with someone that was like, if you can run this truck, we'll help you get your CDL. So I kind of fell right into it and really enjoyed it. At that point, realized the amount of profitable money you could make in trucking. At that point, now that I have my CDL and I'm learning all these things, I want to own a truck one day. Well, I ended up doing that by working for another construction company that did wildland firefighting. Okay. And this is kind of when my aviation kind of started getting re-sparked. So I was doing wildland firefighting, operating equipment on the fires, hanging, it really becomes like for that 14 to 21 days, those people become a little bit of a group and a little bit of your family, right? And so I'd always see the helicopters and be like, I'm going to go talk to those guys, right? They're freaking flying helicopters. So I started getting in like, okay, I've operated dozers, I've operated excavators, I've operated this, that, and the other thing. I really want to operate an airplane or a helicopter.
So that was the spark that, so to speak.
Yeah, it was a little bit of the spark.
I think that's really ironic that as you're, around this wildland fire environment, we use the term spark to get you back into the
Yep, exactly. and it still didn't happen right away because again, I come back home And I really don't know that there's training facilities. I know of like, you can get an instructor. It's, it's going to cost a lot, but I had just barely saved enough money up to try and pursue this trucking company. Right. I had a guy that I knew that had a truck, and I said, if you ever want to retire, I want to buy your truck. Please give me the opportunity. And I had literally been saving up. So doing wildland firefighting, you make really, really good money. So I was just stashing that aside. And believe it or not, he had a cancer scare. And he said, okay, I'm done. I'll give it all to you. This is how much it'll cost. And I had some money saved up, and I didn't quite have enough. So I ended up, going to the banks, and the banks were like, oh, we don't do new ventures. And then I had some family, friends of mine that were like, well, we'll invest in you. Like, give us a business plan and we'll invest in you. And so I gave them this, really thought out 20-page business plan. They loved it. They were going to give me the money. Well, she went to the bank to say, hey, I want you to read this over. I'm about to pull my money out to give this to this kid. And I'm like 20 years old, right, at this point.
Yeah.
I'm going to give this money to this kid to start this trucking company. What do you think of his business plan? Well, the banker was actually so impressed with the business plan. He was like, I'll loan him the money. This bank will loan him the money. So I didn't even have to end up doing that.
Oh, cool. So you got your own truck. Is that where you start to develop your business plan into what it eventually becomes, or does it take some time to get to that point?
So I started off with one dump truck, and the reason why it took off so well is because of the person I am. I'm a really good people person, really good customer service. So when I was working, hauling loads of gravel, doing stuff like that in the past, I had actually built relationships with people through these other companies. And so they knew what kind of job I did. They knew I did a really good job. Like, people knew what to expect from me, and that it was high quality work, even though it was just trucking, right? I was super busy from day one. I hit the ground running as hard as I could. So that being said, and the business person I am, I'm like, well, I need more trucks. I can get another truck. So I ended up buying another dump truck. So that turned into 2 dump trucks, and I got an employee and started running that, and things were going well. Things were dialing in. And so I was like, well, I'm going to buy another dump truck. So I bought another dump truck, and then I had some opportunities to get a end dump. So a big truck and trailer. So it's just the dump truck, just on an 18-wheeler setup. And so I started doing that. And then it just kept progressing. Like, I just kept getting opportunities because I was putting out quality work. I was reliable. And people knew if they called me that the job would get done, it would get done right. And I had built that reputation for myself. So I just kept jumping on the opportunities. So that kind of transitioned into me operating equipment for people. It transitioned to me doing further loads. I started hauling containers for a storage solution company over here. Just kept growing and growing. I had a really hard time ever saying no, which dealt really well for me sometimes.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to that, my friend.
Yes. I jumped into things that I had no clue about. I jumped into hauling cement powder in pneumatic trailers. And so I just had to hire people that knew what the heck they were doing and had to learn from them.
Okay. So as you've built this reputation for yourself, how did things progress from there?
I go from from one truck essentially to 20 trucks throughout the next 5 years. What happening is I'm still intrigued by aviation. I start calling, trying to get on an instructor's list over here.
Okay.
Can't really get on an instructor's list, but I was making enough money. I had set that time aside. I was building this business that I actually thought I actually had a chance to get into aviation. And it kind of takes the twist, because next thing that happens is COVID. It's December of 2019, had the best year that I've had. I'm gearing up for an even better year. Next thing you know, I get all this equipment, I'm ready to roll, and the rug gets pulled out from under me.
Yeah, no kidding.
So essentially, I was in a fight for my life of losing everything, something I had promised myself I was never going to do. And it weighed on me a lot. It brought me to a point that, I really I wanted to just give up with everything. I wanted to just run away from it all. Right. And I was trying really hard to keep the company afloat. I was working 20-hour days, 7 days a week, burning myself out, burning the candle at both ends. Luckily, I had a few really loyal people that worked for me that also did the same. So when things started to really get to the point where I was at a really low, I actually got a call back from one of the instructors. And he's like, do you still want to learn to fly planes? And I'm like, yeah, I'd really like to, but the way life's going right now, I don't know if it's something I could do, but I'm still, I'm really interested. And we get to talking a little bit and he goes, wait, you're so-and-so's son? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, if you would have just told me that like a year ago, I would have told you to get your butt over here. He was telling me he was too busy. Right.
Yeah.
Turns out his wife used to babysit me.
No kidding.
Yeah. And, his son is a couple years older than me. My mom used to babysit his son. And he was like, get over here. That's
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I went on a discovery flight with him, kind of explained like what's going on. He's like, if this is something you want to do, like, let's get into it. And so he worked with me. I basically had to get up at 5 o'clock every morning to go fly, and worked it out to where I realized I wanted to invest that in myself. And so I was going to make it work. I sold things. I sacrificed a lot and I started flying. And it really, in my opinion, is what gave me hope and inspiration and the ability to continue on. I mean, it's not fun getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
No, not for anything. So as you start to find and grow into aviation, how does that affect your business and like the direction you're taking things?
Flying, I wanted flying to be a greater purpose in my life. So that was always in the back of my head. Well, the day finally came in 2021, it was March or April. And this company says, listen, why don't we just join forces and make something work? What are you interested in? I'm like, if I join forces, I'm selling this business. I don't want to necessarily continue to manage it and stuff like this. I've been doing it for 5 years. I'm just beat, from 20. Trucking never stops. I mean, calls at 2 o'clock in the morning, that stuff never stops. So they said, pick a number basically, and we'll buy you out, because they saw the value in the contracts that I had received and the things that I was doing. And so I picked a number, a pretty healthy number, and they didn't blink. We moved forward with it. And that was kind of the transitioning point.
So when that opportunity presents itself, then do you know that you're going to pivot into aviation, or is that something that comes after that moment?
Looking at aviation in general, it's a journey, right? It's a long journey. Mm-hmm. It's not just something that like tomorrow you can do, right? CDL, you can go get your CDL and start driving a truck for somebody. You can't do that in aviation.
Very true.
So I still knew it was a journey, and I still wasn't, I don't think I was taking it as seriously as I could have, because my bandwidth was spread. So that opportunity arose, and I knew that by getting rid of the trucking company, I would be able to open my bandwidth up to continue down this path of aviation. And what's funny is I still I loved flying, and I loved flying the plane, but I knew that I wasn't necessarily going to be fit for like an airline job or something, or a regional job. And so I was flying, and I knew I loved it, but I was still not sure how I was going to fit into it in something I could make a living with. So it was more like, I need to make enough money so I can fly planes. Like that was kind of my thought process at the time. While I had my trucking company, I still divulged in other businesses. I ended up, I bought a street sweeping company in 2020. Well, right before 2020. It was like literally before COVID. I bought this street sweeping company thinking all the greatness, right? But that's a bulletproof business. So I still own that company to this day.
Okay.
And I wanted to open up this gas station because I was thinking to myself, I can haul the fuel myself. I can make money there, and I can run these products and sell these products. And I seem to be pretty good at taking a business and figuring out how to make it run really efficiently. So I ended up buying this store that was being remodeled because the husband had a heart attack in the middle of the remodel. The wife was trying to figure out how to finish it. So it was a really interesting opportunity of like bringing this store back to life again. So I started off with this store. I brought my mom in to manage it, and we kind of hit the ground running. It was a great business, but again, it's another very stressful business dealing with employees. The store has to be open a lot longer hours than a regular business, and you can't just not open it or say, oh, that employee didn't want to come into work. So we had to take over shifts quite a bit ourselves and whatnot. So I jumped into this store, probably not thinking 100% which way I should have done it, but I jumped in the store. I built it up, and I took this store from, it used to make $300,000 a year, and it was now making $1 million, 1.2, and this is 21, 22, going into 23, before I sold the gas station. I was still flying, and this is like 21, 22, and loved it so much and hated the store so much because I just didn't really feel in place. I mean, it was a business that I could operate, but it didn't give me any sustenance, right? It didn't give me anything that felt great at the end of the day. It just felt like it gave me headaches.
Okay.
And so I started trying to take flying more seriously. And I was also getting a little bit of push from the instructor, like, hey, it's time to, get your check ride ready. Like, let's get this going. And I didn't really take my ground as seriously. So I ended up failing my first written test, like, horribly. I was struggling because I was like, I love flying so much, but like my bandwidth is so stretched, I can't even take some of this stuff seriously.
Sure.
I tend to make decisions with a lot of heart, and that community that gas station was going to close down in was very community close to my heart, and I wanted to service them. But so through this journey, I'm like learning about myself. I'm learning that like, yeah, this doesn't give me much sustenance, these gas stations, even though I'm trying to help these communities. But like I'm slowly like killing myself in a sense, like I'm wasting my time for other people and I'm not getting anything in return.
So when you find this place that you're not able to like find fulfillment in your regular work and you're thinking aviation might be the key, like how do you start to transition then into taking that part of things more seriously?
So yeah, back up a little bit. So 2022, I'm taking flying more seriously, and I want to really get into it more. And my instructor, who I've become really good friends with, I'm like, hey, I want to invest some money possibly into just buying a plane, because I feel like if I buy the plane, I will take it more seriously, because it'll be something that if it's sitting, it's going to cost me money per se, versus like I'm just blowing money on renting a plane, right?
Yeah.
I buy a plane, Cessna 172.
Okay.
And we go to Riverside, California to pick this thing up. Me and my instructor. I don't even have my pilot's license at this point. Like I'm taking
that shouldn't stop you.
Yeah. I'm taking my sweet time, right? Just because, and really it was because I was so worried that I was going to fail another written. Like I was just, but I saw that like, if I'm going to take this seriously, I need to buy the plane. And that's just how my mind works. We go to pick it up. Battery's dead. Mechanics kind of shady. Spent money. I got a good deal on it for post-COVID pricing. And my instructor's like, JD, what did you do? I don't know if this is going to be a very good plane. It kind of looks like junk. You know, we didn't even fly the thing. You bought this thing. We flown down to get it. It looks good on paper. Has like 12,000 hours on the airframe. Needs a paint job. And I'm like, you know what? There's just something about this thing. It's mine and all that. We flew it back, and it was a great experience. It did a great job after we swapped the battery out. It was a 6-hour flight. And the more we flew it, the more my instructor goes, you know what? This plane's a pretty good little plane. It may look ugly, but she's got a lot of heart in her.
Don't so many of them, though, in GA.
Yep, exactly, right? This thing looked like it should have been on corrosion corner for years upon years. I washed this thing. I buffed the paint that was coming, like the metal is showing through the paint. I'm buffing it. I'm trying to make this thing look good, took the whole interior out, cleaned it as best as I could. It started to come around, and Ron really started like flying it. And the opportunity arose where he goes, JD, what do you think about renting this thing out? And I'm like, hey, I'm a business guy and I'm about making money. You're telling me I'm going to make money? Great. Let's do this. So I started my flight school, Dark Horse Aviation. Now I own a flight school and I don't even have my private pilot's license.
I was just going to ask you that. At that point, you're starting this flight school and you're like, maybe I'll get my check ride soon.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I got a hangar over here, and that's when I started being a little bit more exposed to the air park.
So we joke a bit about how you have involvement now with this school, but where do you take things from there? I know that you want to take things more seriously. You've got this plane now. What's the next step for you?
As we roll into 2023, I joined this group called Limitless Society. It's like a mentorship group. It's a group of networking and people. Because again, I still live in this small town.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of people that think like me. There's not a lot of people that are into business like me. It's really hard to relate with people sometimes. So I joined this group, and I do some mentorship with Keaton, and he's one of the guys that was one of the Diesel brothers. He's the big guy called the Muscle, and started doing some mentoring with him. He's into aviation; those guys are into aviation as well. So there's someone to kind of look up to, right? And he tells me a lot of things that I think I knew, but I wasn't accepting, right? He's like, okay, you are stretched too thin. You have this business and this business and this, and you're doing this and you're trying to fly, and you tell me you love flying and you're not doing anything with it because you're so spread out. You can't be good at all of these things. You can't be great at 10 different things. You can be good. You can be mediocre. He's like, I want to challenge you. And I was really open-minded at this point because I really did want to find my sustenance. I want to challenge you to figure out what's important and get rid of the rest, right? And at the time, I'm running this sweeping company. I'm still helping out with trucking and stuff. I was doing some consulting for sales and ready mix concrete. I was kind of doing that. I've got this airplane business. I want to start this coffee business. I want to do all these things. He's like, figure out what's important, shed the weight of the rest. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to really think about this. And so that was at the moment that I decided that the stores needed to go. They hadn't quite paid themselves back yet. Like I had actually invested a lot of money into these stores and they were making money, but they really hadn't paid themselves back yet. In fact, I had spent a good chunk of the money I made selling the trucking company doing that. And, I'd bought the plane and stuff like that. So, but I knew if I was going to do this, I needed to dial in. And so I started to learn about this helicopter company, Highland Helicopters, and I was enthralled with it. I was talking to another guy that was training, and I was like, man, something kept telling me I'd looked into it in the past. I'm like, it's expensive. It's way more expensive than general aviation,
Mm-hmm.
But helicopters seemed to call my name in a different way, right? it's a utility bird, right? It's meant for utility. And that's kind of where I come from when it comes to,
Oh, sure. With your background, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So it kind of called my name. So, as I'm learning about myself and growing into this and getting a little bit more bandwidth and time where I'm running the flight school, I start showing up to this helicopter place and I just start showing up. Like I walk in, I introduce myself, kind of hang out a little bit, just trying to like ooh and ah, surround myself with it. And doing things that I've now like kind of learned are really good ways for people to actually to make their goals happen and to like manifest things, right? Sure. I was like, I can't
sounds like just good networking, you know?
Right. Yeah. I'm like, and it was funny because my instructor was like, when you first came in, all the other people at this air park bitch about our helicopters. And I thought you were going to come in here and start complaining about something like, oh, our helicopter was parked in your way or whatever. And you just came in and you're like, hey, this is cool. I own this airplane over here and seen you guys and you guys are pretty cool. And that just kind of turned into me like showing up once a week, twice a week. And the owner, you know, he's like, man, when you were coming in, I was like, whose friend is this? Who keeps showing up? Yeah. And I was like, I'm gonna get into it eventually. Like I'm gonna figure out how to get into these.
So I assume it doesn't just stop with a couple visits here and there over the early parts of your time at the airport. Like from there, are you able to build on that networking and relationship with that helicopter school?
Some very like kind of key things happened in that meantime. Right before 2023, the guy here at Highland, he actually had his DPE crash his helicopter, his main helicopter.
Oh man.
So that was a big hit to him. And that when I found out about that, you know, I'd been hanging around a little bit. I brought him some bourbon and I said, let's talk, man. I've had crap happen too. You know, I've had 4 trucks roll over, not the same thing, but a little bit of the same thing, you know, pretty expensive piece of equipment either way. Like I said, this is right as 2023 happens, Christmas time, his wife passes away.
Jeez.
This man is building this business. His helicopter, one of his main income producers, crashes, and then he loses his wife. And I could see in the time that I'd spent with him, or even here, I saw this toll that took on him. I didn't care about anything. I wasn't trying to get anything out of it. I just started honestly prioritizing my time, and I started showing up every day to this place. And I started fixing things. His tractor was broken that pulled out a helicopter. I fixed it. I was like, hey, I put a new alternator on your tractor. He's like, and at this time, he's still kind of like, who is this? Like, he knows.
I was going to say, is he still on this? Who is this dude who's hanging around fixing my stuff?
Yeah, really was. And he's, you know, so I'm just like, hey, like, I showed up, I fixed this. Oh, your golf cart shit the bed. Hey, I fixed this. Cause I could just tell that like mentally he was in a place mentally that like I was in during COVID, and I saw that.
Okay.
And so as I'm like realizing this and helping him out, I'm doing this mentorship program. I'm deciding like I'm prioritizing my time, and I'm deciding like I'm getting rid of these stores. And so I started making the moves to do that. And in the meantime, I still am prioritizing things to help him for free. Like I didn't want anything from it. And I just wanted to help him out. Good people got to stick together. And we transitioned and I'm like itching to get in the helicopter. I got to go on one helicopter flight after I fixed his pad, the roller pad that pulls the helicopter out. It was broken, and so I fixed it. And so he's like, we got to put the helicopter back on the pad. Let's go for a flight. And I freaking get in that helicopter, and I'm like, this is the first time me flying in the helicopter front seat, you know, and I'm like, All right, this is so much fucking cooler than an airplane. Still love flying airplanes, don't get me wrong, but it's the differences, right? Airplanes for getting somewhere, helicopters for getting to know where you're at.
So was that like a pivotal moment for you of like, this is it. This is where I'm going to go with my career with aviation.
Yeah, I knew I needed to get into a helicopter somehow, and I didn't quite know how. Like, I really didn't have a couple of years ago I'd have had the money for it, but now I didn't. Right?
At that point, had you gotten your fixed wing yet, or
no? I still haven't gotten my fixed wing yet. We're not. That's the problem. So I'm like, okay. All right. Then I start like researching into it. Well, what happens is Heli Expo comes up in March of 23. And, the instructors and him, he's kind of like, hey, you've done so much for you. I want you to come to Heli Expo. And I'm like, really? And so, I booked a ticket. I had a place to stay or come on to Heli Expo. And I did. And at first he didn't even think I was actually going to go. He's like, I offered it to him, but he's like, I'm going. I'm going to So I went to Heli Expo with them, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I was like, I am going to figure this out. I ended up coming back, and I had some money on a credit card, and I wanted to get things rolling. So I just swiped my card on his computer with the instructor and said, this will be for lessons. And didn't even ask him about it, tell him about it, or nothing. I just put the money on my account. And I was like, we'll figure it out here as we go. We start trying to get things going. He's like, did you just put like X amount of dollars in my account? And I was like, yeah, I want to start. And he's like, all right, well, you've obviously done a lot for me. So let's kind of figure this out. I'm like, I was like, I don't know where I can go, but I want to see how far this will take me.
Yeah, for sure.
I start flying though with him, and every minute of it's just like, yes. And I was good at it. And I already had some of the aeronautical knowledge, and that was the pivotal moment that kicked my butt into gear to finish my private on the fixed wing, because basically could use that time that I already made. Cause they say X amount has to be in aircraft. So, but X amount has to be in helicopter and stuff like that. So I'm like, I got to get my private done. So I ended up just busting my butt. And so March was Heli Expo. I ended up doing my private check ride in May. So I went and busted butt on ground, finished my written, finished my private check ride in May, and continually was flying helicopters. And, he was like, when you get to your private we were going to just do my private for the helicopter. And essentially what we had worked out is the money I had paid and what I had been doing to help was enough to get me to the private standpoint. So I was like, heck yeah. So I'm making this happen. I get my private in the air, and I had to get it done. I almost couldn't take my check ride in the airplane because of weather. And I ended up doing my oral the night before and flying super early the next day, because if I didn't, I wasn't going to be able to take my check ride in the helicopter 3 days later.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, I got to get my private done in the airplane. So I get my private done in the airplane, and the helicopter check ride gets canceled. Something happened. And so as this is going on, like, I'm getting a lot more involved. I'm not just fixing stuff anymore. I'm going on lift jobs, helping Brandon hook up to stuff, and helping with search and rescue missions and stuff like that. Like, I've really gotten to the point where I'm just a part of the jobs here. And the check ride gets canceled. So we're like, okay, the next one should be in another month. So that one ends up getting canceled. And so like we keep waiting, and I'm like pausing flying, but still trying to fly because I don't really have the budget for it. Because I'm not, like I said, at no point have me working for this company did I want compensation or want to, say, well, I'm giving you this, so you need to give me that. I'm like, I'm giving you my time because I want to be here and be a part of this, and I'm showing you that.
That's what I was just going to say.
Worthy.
That is such a good point that you make there. I think too many people get caught up in that space of, I'm going to do this networking, and it's kind of a what's in it for me. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of thing. And at least from the people I've talked to, like, you're more successful and it's more genuine when you go into it with the right intentions.
And it's a lesson that I learned like later on down, like with Limitless and Keaton, he talked about like non-transactional relationships. And it's like everybody's always wanting to say, well, I'll give you this as long as you give me this.
Right, right.
And he talks about it too. It will so pay off if you're just willing, like, I'm going to give and give and give and give you more. And if you give back, great, but I'm not going to ask for anything. And that's kind of how it is even to this day. Cause like I said, I'm still training. So
yeah, as you're still training, talk to me about like how things are progressing in the helicopter side of things for you.
We end up going on a search and rescue mission in this MD-500 helicopter, and we get an engine ship light. And that's like a pretty big deal. Like, you got to be prepared to auto rotate. In fact, the emergency procedure is like, if there's a safe place to land in front, like, you're landing this helicopter no matter what. Don't even try to go back to the airport, right? But we were over the lake, and really the only best place to go was to turn back and go to the airport. So we were just monitoring everything, being ready to do this auto rotation wherever we needed to. But we were trying to make it back to the airport. We were prepared if not. So we make it back and we tear into it, and it turns out that like we basically need an engine. Things are timed out on this thing. We're going to try to put a new turbine, a new compressor in, but like financially, just all the things. So it ends up basically being like, we're selling this machine and we don't have a machine to be able to continue your stuff. And I'm like ready to check ride for my private. Yeah. We have this R44 that we use for instrument training. Well, if you want any PIC time in an R44, you have to have 20 hours in it, dual. It doesn't matter where you're at. You have to have that time unless you have a category in class already, which I didn't. I started talking to my instructor. I'm like, I'm really not that far from commercial. Like, I could it's 150 hours to get your rotorcraft commercial versus 250 in the airplane.
Yeah, sure.
I've got 120 hours in the airplane. I've got 40 hours in the helicopter. Like, what do I need to do to get my commercial? Like, what's a commercial check ride? And they're like, well, it's essentially the same check ride as private, just a lot tougher. Like, you got to be perfect, you got to know your knowledge, you don't really get any leeway. I'm like, well, then is that something I can do? I already have to fly an extra 20 hours in this helicopter without the PIC. Like, should I do that? And me and my instructor agreed that was the way to go. So I basically put a plan together. I started flying my airplane every other day and flying the helicopter every other day because I still needed to get some PIC, some cross country, and all that to put it together. So we set the stuff together, and boy, I flew my butt off until like basically check ride. Like, I had to fly 4 night hours basically the weekend of my check ride.
Man. So yeah, you're definitely putting the work in then to get to those ratings. So like, what's the timeline look like from there for like achieving your different ratings?
So May, I had my private pilot's license in the plane. And by September, I had my commercial in a helicopter. So I went from starting my flying journey in 2020 to getting my private in 2023 and then being a commercial helicopter pilot a couple months later.
There's a couple things that you did a little backwards, but I mean, you got there.
Yeah, I got there.
Let's open a flight school.
Yeah, exactly. Which is still running today. We got 2 aircraft flying. I got 2 different instructors that are helping. Cool. I'm still not a CFI. I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
But, it's how I really had to divulge myself into aviation to get that way.
The company that you're with right now? I mean, you're working through your ratings and working up towards becoming, a helicopter pilot, but you're also doing work within this company. Some of it paid, some of it unpaid. Explain to me a little bit about the type of work that you guys are doing with the helicopters at that company.
Yeah, so this company is mainly a flight school, but that's not the only thing we do. That's kind of his reputation. We're a mountain training flight school. We're at high altitude, 6,800 feet elevation at our airport. So that's why we use the MD 500. So he's really built his reputation on the high mountain turbine training, like actually getting experience that will help you transition into a legitimate job in the future rather than, hey, I spent 500 hours and all I've flown is an R-22 and an R-44. Yeah. And you're trying to figure out how to get a job. Like a lot of his students get actually really good jobs low time because of it. So we're first and foremost, we're a flight school. And then we do lift jobs. So we'll go out and, like some of the stuff we've done recently is for cell phone tower work, brought equipment up to close mine shafts up. So stuff like that. We do charter work as well. So flying people from like Aspen and Telluride. We're in a mountain town. There's a lot of mountain skiers and we do tours. So we have some tour routes set up around here. We do a lot of that as well. And search and rescue. We have some of the most cutting edge search and rescue equipment in the country. Okay. We have a what's called a RECO device. And there's probably 8, I think, in the United States now, but it's avalanche recovery devices. They use them a lot handheld at ski areas and stuff, but we actually have a helicopter one that it hangs down about 50 feet from underneath the helicopter, and we can search quite a large radius for this RECO equipment. Yeah. And then we're the only one in the United States right now that has this new one called Life Seeker. And it's the cutting edge technology for first response if someone gets lost and, they still have a cell phone, but they're obviously, we have 2 million acres of Wimmanooch wilderness by us.
Okay.
And so we have a lot of hikers that get lost or hunters and stuff like that. And what this will do is it's like our helicopter becomes a cell phone tower, and we can specifically pinpoint their cell phone and put service to their cell phone only and get a hold of them to figure out where they're at. We can pinpoint them and triangulate them and stuff like that. And we're the only one in the country right now that actually has this.
That's crazy.
So yeah, so we do a lot of everything. So I've gotten the opportunity to not only be training here, but I've gotten the opportunity to be involved with the growth and every little aspect of this business because I just kept showing up.
So now that you have hung out all this time and you do have your ratings, did they bring you on and actually start paying you?
Right now, because I'm still doing like trying to get my CFI and stuff like that. I've not gotten to that point. And I'm sure if I asked, I could. But like I said, at the end of the day, like I don't want anything. You let me fly this helicopter and I'll work my butt off for it. And in fact, it was really cool and kind of relatable to I started reading Fred North's book, Flying Sideways. I don't know if you heard about that book coming out.
I haven't yet.
Fred North, he's a really famous stunt pilot, does a lot of stuff in helicopters for stuff like Fast and the Furious and all that. Okay. But point being is it was funny, relatable that he really wanted to get into helicopters, and he ended up working his butt off for free to get helicopter training.
The helicopter side of things, between that and fixed wing, the cost associated with getting those ratings in a helicopter is so much more than it is with fixed wing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's about $10,000 to get your private pilot's license in an airplane and about $50,000 in a helicopter. So.
Man. You found another aviation venture to get yourself involved in too, right?
I did.
As if a flight school and working with these guys for just basically time to hang out in their helicopter and with them, you got something else going on too. Tell me about that.
I've always been in the preface that I was meant to do something bigger. I've always felt like I want to be able to change lives. I get the most fulfillment out of being able to help others. And I felt that I am that kind of person that I would be able to inspire other people and change someone's course in trajectory just because of my presence, in a sense. So I knew I wanted to start a company that I had service companies, I had gas stations, and I'm like, I want us to have a company of something I'm passionate about and that can turn into helping people, but still be something that you don't buy just once, or it's not just a service-based business, right? So I'm super into coffee. And in fact, my cousin is in Hawaii. He's in the Coast Guard. And I started really getting into coffee because he started getting into roasting it. Spending 7-8 years in Hawaii, obviously they do a lot of coffee, exportations. And so he started getting into it. I spent some time with him. I was like, this is interesting. I really like this. And the more I thought about it, aviation and coffee is something that goes so hand in hand.
It
right?
Sure does.
There's so many Facebook groups, just like one that we, connected on, is airplanes and coffee, aviation and coffee. Got my morning coffee. It's all about coffee. And there's no big coffee brand. Why is there no big aviation coffee brand? I mean, people have their little small specialty stuff, but I'm thinking more like, I want to be the Black Rifle of aviation, right?
Sure.
And knowing that by doing that, I could potentially get other people inspired into aviation, whether it's just getting them to recognize it, but to be exposed to it, right? To be exposed to it. So I'm like, I could build this coffee company for aviators. It's a pilot coffee made for pilots by pilots, but that has a bigger purpose. And that purpose is to be able to offer scholarships. There's really not a lot of scholarships unless you're trying to go to an ATP school, or there's like some women's scholarships and stuff, but there's not really any major scholarships for getting people into aviation. So I want to be able to do that. And I saw by building this aviation coffee brand that would be a source to be able to do so. I want to build this business. I'm looking for somebody to help me roast coffee because my cousin's still in the Coast Guard. He can't produce the amount of coffee that we need to produce, but I know what I like and I know what I want to produce. So I got hooked up with a roaster in Tennessee and we worked together. I started building these blends. I started building my, logo. I started kind of just spending a lot of time developing this. I spent the majority of 2023 from this envisionment to development, really dialing in this coffee company. And it's really starting to create that envisionment. It's really starting to come to a head, and it's super exciting.
And I'll be honest with you, I really like your logo.
Yeah, thank you.
I have it pulled up on my screen here as we've been talking, and I'm like, man, this is a sharp logo.
Yeah. So that's the thing, and it came to me, right? Like I was like, what, on the ball coffee, and it's like, well, what does that mean to a normal person? They don't really understand that, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's been cool to explain that to people. It's like, it's on the ball coffee. It's keeping you on the ball. Well, what's being on the ball? Well, on the ball is keeping in trim. You're keeping your aircraft in trim. If you're keeping yourself in trim, you're going to do the most efficient and best job. And so, I'm using that as, it's like, on the ball coffee is the coffee that keeps you in trim, keeps you on the ball. And so then I was like trying to figure out my preface, like, what is my slogan, right? Like, what is it going to be? And it took me a while, and then it just boomed in my head. I'm like, stay coordinated. Because if you stay coordinated, it can travel through so many things than just aviation, right? Like, if you're coordinated, if you took things learning to become a pilot and being a pilot, taking those things and applying those things that I learned in an everyday aspect will actually help you be successful in life in general. It's more than just this, specialty coffee company. It's going to be getting, young aviators and old age, like people that have dreamed to be in aviation and never got the opportunity. I want to be able to give that to them. But then I also want to give just even people the opportunity to understand and use the things that I've learned in aviation and what other people have learned in aviation to apply to general principles in life in general. So hopefully I'll be starting this podcast soon as well for that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. The thing I like about your story is, I mean, I can talk to all kinds of people that are, yep, I did this, I went this path, and now I'm with the airlines, right? You've taken your love of aviation and you've made it your own. So I think that's really inspirational, I think, to others, because you have some people, too, that aren't able to necessarily make that leap into an airlines as a profession, or they don't want to. So the idea that you can make aviation a career on your own terms, I think, is really powerful.
I've always been that way in general. I always find the path that's least taken when it comes to certain things like that. So, and that's where I envision myself. I'm like, if I have this opportunity to continue and build this company with Highland and maybe be a part of it one day. And when I say a part of it, I mean, maybe be an owner, maybe be a, merge the companies with my flight school, whatever it is.
Sure. Yeah.
And I have the ability to make that part of my aviation career too. Or if I want to just work for them, I'm going to go fly missions, but then on the off time, I'm building my coffee brand, or, I get to do that with aviation. I get to, what? So that's the thing is I'm like, however I'm doing it, I'm going to be happy doing it.
We ended up talking a bit about your coffee, but where can people find that?
So they can find us on ontheballcoffee.com, or they can look on our socials, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok is On The Ball Coffee. We have actually started getting into a couple FBOs locally right now.
Oh, there you go.
But I'm hoping to have my coffee in an FBO. So be looking at your FBOs for my coffee. And if you love my coffee and you want to see it grow, make your FBO try it. So they'll
there you go.
be a part of it.
Yeah.
So that's another way that I would like to reach out to the masses of that.
The final question I have for you, if you could give someone advice on making a transition into a career in aviation, what would that be?
Be ready and be willing to put everything on the line for what you believe in that. So if you want to get into aviation, whether it's planes, helicopters, whether it's hot air balloons, whatever, be ready to devote yourself wholeheartedly, because it's not something you can do in minuscule or like half-assed, basically would be the best way to say that. And be willing to be non-transactional, because really at the end of the day, that's what I've seen. And in general, I mean, 1,500 hours, even if you do want to get to an airline, is a journey, and it's a hard journey. Sure. And you got to be willing to be dedicated to that.
Well, I think that's great advice. So I just want to thank you one more time for coming on and telling your story. I think that it's like I mentioned earlier, I think it's a great story to tell, that more non-traditional route of things you can be doing in aviation to make it your own thing. So can't thank you enough for sharing that story.
Yeah, thank you for having me on and letting me come ramble on your podcast about my whole life.
Absolutely. Thank you once again to JD for joining me on this episode of Fly the Transition. I reached out to him just before putting this episode together, and I have some updates from him. Since our interview, he is now a CFII in helicopters, and the business On The Ball Coffee is growing, and they're actually hoping to offer their first scholarship next year. So JD certainly doesn't show any signs of slowing down, and good for him. He's put in a lot of hard work to get to where he's at, and it's really cool to see him be successful in his own brand of aviation. And that brings me to a highlight from this episode. JD doesn't take that quote-unquote traditional path of getting a job in aviation. He really has found his own space with the helicopter stuff, with working into this coffee business, and he's made it his own. I know we talk about this from time to time, but there are other opportunities in aviation that are not just in airlines jobs. So do your homework, seek out information on those, and see where aviation can take you. The other point from this interview I really want to drive home is the importance of non-transactional networking. This concept is not unique to aviation, and I can tell you from any industry, those who would walk into a networking opportunity who have the pure intent of what's in it for me, how can I use this networking to better myself, it doesn't come across as genuine and people see right through it. So still go out there, still get involved, still find those opportunities, but do so in a space of how can I help others find aviation, how can I volunteer and give back to others, and how can I learn something along the way. If you do that, the networking opportunities will create themselves. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Fly the Transition. If you did, I hope that you will like and subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, 5-star ratings, all that fun stuff. It really helps to grow the podcast. And I'm currently in a process of looking for future guests, so if you are interested or you know someone who'd have a story that would be able to resonate with their audience, I hope you'll reach out to me on any of my social medias or email me at flythetransition@gmail.com. That will do it for this episode of Fly the Transition. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, keep your eyes on the skies and your dreams soaring high.
You've been listening to Fly the Transition. Life is too short for you not to do what you love. And our passion is to give you all the tools you need to make the transition from doing what you do to being in the aviation industry. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, you can reach out by email at flythetransition@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook at Fly the Transition. And the website for Flying Midwest Media is flyingmidwest.com. Keep soaring. See you next time on Fly the Transition.